Good morning, everybody. This hardcore league, I started with a wizard arcane archer with the goal of getting all of the rewards using 6 constitution only. And while I would love to show you this build and how it worked, I died, unfortunately. But not in the way you're thinking, like, oh, 6 constitution, the character was too squishy. No, I died twice to lag, and my last death was because after I got fully geared, I forgot to put a death block augment in an 801 to a Finger of Death, all of which was off stream, so I had no footage of it anyway. So I needed to build a brand new character, and a brand new character I did build as I swapped into Wizard again, because I really think that Archmage is powerful. I think Archmage is very strong, and it can do a lot of really interesting stuff. Now, the first time I played Archmage, I recently posted a video about Enchanter Archmage, and that's not very good, mostly because you can kind of always get enchantment on Archmage. You don't really need to specialize or focus into it, so it's a bit of wasted time. However, this character is not an enchanter. This is an Evocation Archmage. Now, this build is going to be very similar to the build that I posted for the free-to-play Archmage for this build guides for this season. However, it's not exactly the same. The main difference is I'm playing as a Warforged, which of course is not free, and there's a couple different changes here and there based on the things that I already have. So the question is, how does Wizard Archmage perform, especially in an environment where you just have lower stats on average, being on Hardcore League with less access to resources and no past lives? And the answer is extremely good. Wizard almost feels like cheating in a sense, where there's just this level of consistency you don't get with some of the other spellcasters. Being able to just swap out spells whenever I want, and if a monster happens to be immune to one type of magic, just cast a different type of magic with no penalties is really nice. One of the things that's great about Sorcerer is in Epics you can just fully focus in on one element. Get pure fire damage, get that fire elemental form, and blast everything with fire. But when you're level 15, you can't do that, and you need to have a secondary damage type. And your secondary damage type feels way worse than your main one. But as a wizard, they buff all damage types equally, and as a result, you can kind of swap as you want. Now, of course, when you do move into epics, the convenience factor that sorcerers and druids and alchemists get, where they can just pick one element and go, you definitely feel that. You have to actually cast different spells. However, the burst damage that you get from the tier 5 ability Arcane Supremacy is absolutely unbelievable. It feels so good to just start smashing monsters for billions of damage. Bit of an exaggeration, but it's a lot of damage, and it feels very, very good. As far as the leveling process goes, I actually found that Wizard is surprisingly easy to level. I mean, the main reason is that you get a lot of meta magic feats from your Wizard class levels, as Wizards get 5 free feats during the level up process, but also the Archmage heavily reduces the cost of your meta magic feats. Meaning, my first life Wizard was running Maximize and Quicken almost the entire time during the leveling process without even thinking about what else I would need to be doing. It was very convenient and easy to level, being able to swap out spells and always have the right thing for the right moment. Now, I will say something that's important about Wizard, especially if you're playing it on a first life character, is shrine placement. You should know where shrines are in quests, and if you don't, make sure you're being a little bit more conservative with your spell points. You will still need to use shrines a lot on a wizard, which is something that I did quite frequently while I was leveling this character, going from shrine to shrine, making sure that if I knew there was one coming up, I was spending more spell points. If I knew I had a dry spell for a bit and I wasn't going to see a shrine, to use less spell points. Now, the reason I'm playing as a Warforged is because I wanted to be able to heal myself more consistently than being an undead. You see, the undead can heal themselves as a wizard because you get access to negative energy burst as well as the death auras. The problem is, these things are delayed. Negative Energy Burst has a relatively long cast time and doesn't heal for as much because it deals area of effect damage. And Death Aura heals for a lot over time and not instantaneously. Playing in an area like Hardcore, I wanted to make sure I could get my character healed right away. And that is why I went with Warforged. Warforged can heal themselves through the repair spells, which are arcane spells, and specifically once you reach level 11, you're able to get access to Reconstruct, which is the equivalent of heal, but for robots. The amount of healing from Reconstruct is substantial, and pretty much once I got it through the entire endgame, I could always heal myself up to full with one button press, With a relatively fast cast time and short cooldown, it saved me on more than one occasion and allowed me to ensure that I never really had to worry about getting into any type of danger with this character. Additionally, because my character is a Warforged, I can also use adamantine plating. Adamantine plating is a little funky. It acts like heavy armor, but it doesn't require proficiency, which means I don't need proficiency on my wizard, and you can get enough arcane spell failure out of the Eldritch Knight tree to completely mitigate the cost of it, so you just get full armor, resulting in my wizard being staggeringly tanky in the later levels of the game. Now, if you are free to play and you don't own the Warforged race, you can unlock it, as unlocking the Warforged race is available with 400 favor, so get out there, do some quests, and even on a free-to-play account, you can unlock the Warforged race relatively easily, and if you want to try playing this character, it's not too difficult to begin getting access to. Plus, the Warforged race is really good, so definitely something to look into. So now the big question, how does it perform at the endgame? How does it perform in Reaper mode? And the answer is, this build is amazing, because I end up using Macrotech as my main epic destiny. It's not something I was thinking at first, but it just sort of works with the wizard. You see, one of the biggest problems that wizard has is the lack of burst damage. Sure, you have sustained damage in that you can just keep casting different spells, but when there's a big monster, they're gonna beat your face in. And you can't really do a whole lot about that unless you can hold them, or hopefully get out of range so you can kill them slowly and over time. But Macrotech turns that on its head by giving you access to two things. First, you get access to the Rune Arms. Rune Arms scale off of intelligence and evocation DCs, and as an evocation spellcaster, you are very, very good at using Rune Arms, allowing Rune Arm hits with tier 5 shots to hit for over 25,000 damage with my capped out wizard, which is a lot of damage to do for something that has 0 cost. And the second part is Maximum Overdrive, the epic destiny epic moment. You see, Maximum Overdrive reduces your spell cooldowns by 50%, allowing you to just belt out spells. You're constantly hitting Meteor Swarm into Iceberg, into Thunderstroke, Rune Arm shots, Acid Well, just blasting spells over and over and over and over. Sure, it doesn't necessarily give you that same burst damage of like Ruin, Greater Ruin. However, it's a lot more consistent than that for those burst phases. During the 30 seconds that Maximum Overdrive is active, you're doing tremendous amounts of damage. And during the Reaper process, I found this to be incredibly valuable because I could delete anything I wanted. In fact, thanks to Macrotech giving me a good amount of safety, my character could be really tanky in Reaper 4, stand with the monster hits, stand up to bosses, to the point where I was actually able to solo some Reaper 4s. On hardcore, on a wizard, just tanking away. I was really surprised by how effective Macrotech is. I was definitely not expecting to get that sort of result. I knew the tankiness was going to be good, which is why I went with the Rune Arm and the Mantle bonus, but again, I really wasn't expecting it to kind of line up here. Now, is this the most damage you can do? No. If you did want to go for more damage, Draconic Incarnation is the obvious answer, and in fact, I did use Draconic Incarnation for the Dragon Breath, because you can't really get away from the fact that Dragon Breath is the best attack in the game for spellcasters. But even with that being said, Ruin and Greater Ruin are very, very good, and they come out of the top of Draconic Incarnation with their upgrades. However, I just couldn't spare the feats. I did a funky feat strategy to get an extra +3 evocation DCs, which you can find in the build linked below. And so my DCs were over 110, which is really nice. But then the cost is I had some funky stuff going on in terms of getting the damage output. And I really wanted the DCs more than anything, so I'd be able to land like holds and other stuff. So I did have to make some sacrifices, but in general, it was very, very powerful, and I was very happy with the performance of it. Wizard exceeded my expectations. I thought it was going to feel fine. It ended up feeling really, really good. And at the beginning of doing Reapers, I was a little bit nervous to go into rooms because I just wanted to get a feel for my character and how it was going. And by the time I got close to 400 and surpassed 400 Reaper XP, or 400,000, I was just charging into rooms first, and I didn't even care if there was a tank or healer or DPS or really anybody else in the group, because it doesn't matter. I'm just going to give them the old wizard treatment, teach them what an Archmage can do. Now, if you want to see an Archmage and see what it can do, then you got to pay attention to me with the build. So you want to be an Evoker? You want to be an Archmage? Well, let me show you how it's done. This is Strimtom, my Warforged wizard here on Hardcore League. And I gotta say, I was very happy with the stats. Look at this. Level 32 wizard, first life character, 200 physical resistance rating as a wizard, 100 magical, as well as 145 armor class, which actually gets even higher, as well as having 1800 life. I am not a melee, I am a spellcaster, so this feels pretty good. How do you build it? Well, you need Constitution. I started with 20. You need Intelligence. I started with 18. I put all my points in Intelligence on level up, and that's it. This is useless. This doesn't do anything. I don't need this, and I don't need that, so I got rid of all of it. If you were to play this and you're a beginner and you're just starting out, take a little bit less Constitution and take some Strength, because you want to have probably like a 12 or a 14 Strength if you can at the start, just so that way you can carry some more equipment. I mitigate that by just getting to cap and then grabbing an augment, so my strength is actually 27, so that way my equip load is pretty high, so I don't have to worry about getting overburdened by picking up items, but that's just something you need to keep in mind. As far as your skills go, as a wizard, you really just need Spellcraft and Repair. These are the only two that really matter. On top of that, I also got Tumble for tumbling around. I grabbed Search. I like having Search on a wizard because you're intelligence-based. Your Search is usually going to be pretty good. So I have a 83 Search right here, which is not too bad. Allows me to find pretty much every secret door, which is convenient. Can't find traps, can find secret doors. And then I also took Balance. Now, I did take Balance here. I would recommend it because I am taking single weapon fighting for health. So if you want to get extra health, Balance is good for that. As this character, for the leveling style, I grabbed the Meta Magic feats Quicken, Maximize, and Heighten. I took Heighten at level 20. That was the last feat that I took. Heighten increases the level of your spells, making the DCs on them higher, but only to the maximum spell you can cast. So if you take Heighten at level 3, it doesn't really do anything because you can cast only level 2 spells, and most of your spells are 1 and 2, so it's not very powerful. But at level 20, this can make my lower level spells cast as 9th levels, which means they get higher DCs, and it's very useful for that. So I took that last. As far as the spellcasting feats, though, I grabbed Mental Toughness, as well as the Spell Focus, Evocation, Enchantment, and Greater Evocation and Enchantment, which is pretty nice here. And then I also grabbed the Combat Style feat, Single Weapon Fighting, and Improved Single Weapon Fighting, just for some extra hit points. If you still haven't seen this yet, at the bottom you'll notice that there is a little bit of green text here. Improves the hit point bonus of Heroic Durability. Basically, the amount of health you get per level is based on your class. So as a wizard, I get 6 health per level. Each combat style feat gives you an extra 25% of that health per level. So by having 2 of them, I get 50% more health per level. So instead of getting 6, I get 9. That's not a lot of extra health, but get these 2 feats for 3 extra hit points per level. It does end up adding up since it's almost 100 health, and that's pretty good. As far as the epic feats and destiny feats go, I do take epic mage armor because this character is in fact playing as a Macrotech, and epic mage armor is very, very good for Macrotech. Perfect single weapon fighting for those extra hit points. And then you're going to notice spell specialty evocation. So there's actually a weird thing. If you have epic spell focus, you can then take spell specialty of another school, which basically says you took 1, 2, 3 feats. So I took epic spell focus enchantment. I have 3 feats for enchantment. By taking the next feat, which is spell specialty evocation, it means that I can basically say, okay, I'm getting +3 to the DCs of my evocation spells. However, the way the feat's coded, it actually stacks with having the regular amounts of DCs. So as a result, I take epic spell focus enchantment, so I get +3 enchantment DCs. I take spell focus and greater spell focus for evocation, so I get +2 there. I think an extra +3 from spell specialty for a total of +5. With Embolden, that's +7 to my evocation DCs. And then finally, with my legendary feat, with Plane of Fire, that's an extra 4, which is +11 to my evocation DCs from feats alone, which is pretty good. Now, as a wizard, you are required to use Master of Knowledge, because this, well, not required, but it's pretty good. As you get Arcane Bolt and Arcane Blast from the tree, when you hit monsters, you get this mental honing stack. I find this really easy to maintain and keep at 30 stacks pretty much all the time, allowing you to have a lot of extra universal spell power and spell critical damage. And let me tell you something, when you have max stacks of this for 60% extra spell critical damage, and you have Arcane Supremacy for 100% spell critical damage, and you have Wellspring of Power for 20% spell critical damage, yeah, as it turns out, having an extra 180 spell critical damage is really, really good for burst phases. So bosses and other things got ripped apart pretty quickly, and it felt very, very, very good. As far as the spells, during the leveling process, you pretty much just want to take damage spells while you level and then swap them out for utility spells. So the utility spells here and the ones that are featured in the build below are pretty straightforward, but to give you some examples as to leveling spells, Acid Spray and Burning Hands are great damage spells for level 1. For level 2, I pretty much only use Scorch. I use Scorch and Melf's Acid Arrow a couple times. Melf's isn't terrible, actually, for stuff like oozes, things that are immune to fire. And it only costs, I think it's 6, so it's just kill something for 6 spell points, which is not too bad. And it's going to kill pretty much every time. So Scorch and Melf's is what I used. Here, level 3, Acid Blast, Fireball, Lightning Bolt. Those are your heavy hitters for level 3. For level 4, all these spells are bad. I don't think I used any of them. I have Acid Rain. I might have cast it once or twice. I don't remember. It doesn't really matter. It's not really important. For 5, the good damage spells are Ball, Lightning, and Cone of Cold. I still use these sometimes. For 6, Autolux Freezing Sphere and Chain Lightning. For 7, Delayed Blast Fireball is the big one. You can also take Prismatic Spray for getting rid of constructs, which is nice. For 8, Arcane Tempest is the big damage spell, although you can also use Greater Shout. Why is this 3 saves lower? That's a bug. I'll figure out why that's a bug later. But these are 2 big heavy hitters. I never really use Greater Shout. I just have it just in case. Sunburst is also nice because it blinds targets, so very, very useful. And then lastly, for your big spells, you've got Acid Well, Meteor Swarm, Thunderstroke, and Iceberg. Those are your big damage spells. You're going to be blasting those out all the time, as well as Mass Hold Monster, which is, again, very convenient. Now, let's look at the enhancement tree. Archmage, I'm taking all the good stuff. Crit, I've got the Maximize and Quicken here. I've got the spell-like abilities, the improved cost of heightening, and all this good stuff up here. Now, the way I did it when I started was not like this. I actually didn't take any of the crit until I hit level 20. These values are pretty low, and they're going to have not much of an impact on your character. What will have much more of an impact will be stuff like 100 spell points. 100 spell points is really good at the beginning of the game. So you want to take the Energy of the Scholar, the improved Maximizing right away, grabbing some of this other stuff, and then later on, respec to grab the full crit line once you get to level 20. I wouldn't recommend taking it right away. Eldritch Knight Tree is pretty self-explanatory. Almost every single wizard and sorcerer plays with some, like at least 11 points in the Eldritch Knight Tree for the proficiencies. With this, Subtle Force 2, you get minus 15 and 20% Arcane Spell Failure reduction, which means that your character has a total of minus 35%, and you can ignore the penalty from using Adamantine Plating, which is what I actually use. I have some points in Vadark Illusionist. I didn't use it, actually. I only have points here because I have extra Universal Tree points, so if you don't own it, don't worry about it. This is not really important. It's just because I had the extra Universal Tomes, so I used them. And then finally we have the Warforged Tree, which gives so much defense. A bunch of Constitution, a bunch of hit points, Repair Amplification, Physical Resistance Rating, 25 Spell Power, and Physical Resistance Rating, making my character very, very tanky. Picking up an extra 20 Physical Resistance Rating from this tree is actually massive on top of the extra defenses you get from other places. In terms of the order and how you would do all of this stuff, the last thing I filled out was the Warforged Tree, with one exception. I do like putting 1 point into Mechanist pretty early. So go 1 and 1, because this gives 20 healing, Repair Amplification, which is just nice to have for 2 points, for 20 ramp. It's very, very good to have. Outside of that, Archmage Wizard, I kind of put a bunch of points into here pretty early, and then I spent also some points in the Eldritch Knight Tree, grabbing stuff like the Spell Sword and Imbue the Blade, simply because it's just some extra spell power. But in general, you're spending most of your points in the Archmage Tree and then moving on to some Eldritch Knight until both these are done, and then moving back to finish off Warforged. I didn't really spend any points in Pale Master or Fadark because that's not the type of character. If you don't want to play as a Warforged, then yeah, you can spend some points in Pale Master instead of the Warforged Tree, and then be an Undead and all that. But yeah, I went with Archmage and Warforged, and it's serving me pretty well. Now, Epic Destinies, I am using Macrotech as the main tree, so I'm using the Force Field Generator for the Epic Mantle. If you're wondering, that's like there's the rune arm here, what these colors are. These colors are representative of these different abilities. So when you have the Force Field Generator, and you turn this on, it's going to add these extra little rings based on each enhancement that you have, which is pretty neat. Tonquin's Hammer, or Tonkine's Hammer, is very, very useful. That has no saving throw, and it'll save your bacon a lot during the level process. So pretty much every caster is going to want to use one of these. It's too good to avoid using either the Thunder or the Lightning Hammer, because it's really, really nice, and it does not share a cooldown with your Epic Strike, which is convenient. I also grab Rune Arm usage, and the Rune Arm DCs and the charge rate and all that. The Rune Arm is quite powerful on this build, I will say. I've tried a lot of different Rune Arms. I think the Vecna Rune Arms are bugged, so I bug reported those. A lot of them don't really do any damage. The Rune Arms that have been the most stand out for me have been this one. So the prototype here, Flash Transferal. This Rune Arm with Light Spirals is way better than I expected. It does mean you have to get Radiance into your build somewhere, so I have it on my Slave Lord's 5 rings. But you do have to figure out a way to get that somewhere, and it does a ton of damage. It's just because wizards don't inherently get Radiance anywhere, but that's not part of their class or their kit. However, Radiance spell power does come straight out of Spellcraft, and you get a lot of universal spell power from the Archmage tree, so you do end up having a lot of it. So even though I'm a wizard, my radiant spell power, my light is still 723 just standing in town without any other bonuses, and I can spike it up to almost 1,000 in combat, which is nice. So it's a lot of extra damage. The other rune arm that definitely kind of blew me away was Breaking the Bank. This rune arm does way more damage than I was expecting, and is quite good. So if you need a secondary rune arm, you can also use Breaking the Bank. The difference is I'm using Flash Transferal because it's part of the Forbidden Knowledge set, the Vecna set, which makes it quite good. If I didn't need that, then yes, the Breaking the Bank would probably be here instead, because it means I can just scale all fire spell power, which is nice. I don't have to worry about trying to get this light and other stuff into the build. But these two are probably my two favorite rune arms of all the ones that I've tried, and the rest of the Vecna ones are garbage. I don't know what's wrong with them. They're like broken. They don't do any damage. I don't like them. Anyways, so that's rune arms. And then, of course, we have Armor Legends. Now, Armor Legends is an ability that is kind of weird. Basically, when you cast Epic Mage Armor, so this Epic Mage Armor here, it's going to give a percentage to a bunch of extra armor class. So that's why I'm at 145 here, because it gives an extra 20 armor class. Sort of. It actually gives a stacking bonus to your armor class based on your character level. So it's like 32. And you can cast this on other people as well. On top of that, you also get the effects based on the drives that you have. So this, I believe I have the Blast Drive for +3 to all saves. And I have the Spark Drive for energy resistance and other things. So my character ends up getting a fair amount of different energy resistances. And if I have the Unyielding Sentinel bonus here from Divine Energy Resistance, it'll go even higher. But I'm pretty defensive against elemental damage. And then, of course, the big one, Maximum Overdrive, which gives you the cooldown reduction. So you can just blast, 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 blast. And it's quite powerful. So I really, really like this. I think they did a good job with Maximum Overdrive. It gives you the feel of Maximum Overdrive. There is a bug, though, which is in Magical Recoil. It says, while using your Makratech Mantle, Firing Rune Arm grants you spell resistance. That just doesn't work. I was really hoping it would, because I was planning on actually fitting in one more spell resistance item. And then with that, I would have over 80 and be basically immune to all incoming magic. That's not the case. This doesn't work. So it is what it is. Hopefully they will fix it. And then up here, we've got the Force Field Generator for 20% hit points while using a Rune Arm, as well as the extra defense while using a Rune Arm. Another reason why Force Field Generator is very good is it gives you absorption to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, which is the physical damage that you take. So it reduces basically melee damage and range damage by 15%, which is huge. Like, that's what kills you, is when a guy comes up to you and just goes melee, melee. Like, oftentimes in Reaper mode, spells aren't that dangerous. There are some exceptions to that, and those are things that do repeated hits over time. So, for example, a cloud effect, or the aura of a fire elemental that is a champion that's constantly applying damage over times to you. Like, those are problems, but it's very rare that a fireball comes in and it kills somebody. That's not usually what's going to kill you. The only magic that would directly kill you would be like Horde Wilting, where you get hit by Horde Wilting, and then there's no way to reduce the damage, so you just sort of die. Here, because of the physical resistance, it means that one of the things that are the most dangerous is a monster jumping on top of you, teleporting on top of you, and it's a champion and it hits you for 2,000. Well, that 15% absorption knocks that down quite a bit, so you might even survive. On top of that, Draconic Incarnation. I don't really need to say much about this. Turns out having the highest damage ability in the game is really good, so we take this one because it is 2d6s plus 20 damage, which is a lot, because it's 1d6 plus 10, and it gets doubled by Gaping Maw. And then I also like to take Pull from the Wellspring to make my Wellspring of Power last for an entire minute, and also give me temporary spell points, which is just convenient for the level process. And then 1 point in Yielding Sentinel because I had 1 point left over. As far as the equipment goes, during the leveling process, you need any different spell power you can get. Potency items are ideal. If you own Feywild or Ravenloft, getting the Potency Scepters from either one is just going to solve all of your problems and make it nice. If not, you got to figure out another way. For the actual endgame equipment that I'm using on this character, I am rolling with three different set bonuses. We have the Arcseal Battle Mage, a set I haven't thought about using in a long time, but it actually perfectly fits this character, with Electric, Fire, Force, and Repair spell power being the things I use the most and getting all of that crit, as well with a 3-piece set here. Additionally, I am using the Vecna set as well. So we have the 5-piece Vecna, where's my piece here, because it gives Profane bonus to a bunch of different stats, as well as ability scores, melee ranged power, universal spell power, spell DCs, among other things. And some of the items are quite good, things like the Bladesworn Bandolier, the Blade Mark Amulet coming in clutch here. I believe, not the Goggles at Dusk. Yeah, I've got the Prototype. I have the Wristbound Transfer. And something that's also nice about this is that the cloaks from the actual main sets can be crafted with Forbidden Knowledge. So I was able to use the Researcher's Cloak here to get Insightful Potency, as well as getting the set bonus on top of that. I'm then going for 2-piece Winter, just because I like the extra physical resistance rating, and these 2 items fit really well with both the Ring of Winter's Chill, filling out all my Ice and Force spell power, and then the Deep Snow Boots giving Constitution and Quality, or Insightful and Quality Constitution, which is really, really nice. And also I got crazy luck with my Curse and landed Curse the Enchanter, because that's just the way things go sometimes. Artifact going with Dino Bone. I don't really have anything else to say about that. Dino Bone artifacts are kind of crazy, so I am in fact using Dinosaur Sword Bone artifact for the extra +2 Sacred to spell DCs, because I can't really fit that in any other way. And then I have a Slave Lord's item for all the stats I couldn't fit anywhere. Quality Intelligence I couldn't fit in. Radiance I couldn't fit in. Spell Sight 20 couldn't fit in. I mean, I could if I bought an Augment, but I didn't want to. And then the Strength, just because I didn't want to buy an Augment either, so I just farmed it out. And then I'm using a Dinosaur Bone weapon. I don't have a horn set up in here. I was originally going to be using the Bright Horn, which is the horn that gives you 1,000 temporary hit points once a minute. But then I was like, you know what? I'd rather go for more damage because my character really isn't dying to anything. Like, I never go under half, and even if I do, I just go whoop, and then I'm back up to full. Even in Reaper mode in combat, it's a full heal from 0. The only exception is if I'm fighting a Plague Reaper, but if I'm fighting a Plague Reaper, you know, I'm not doing anything anyway. So I was thinking about, instead of Bright Horn, going with the Flame Horn, which makes it so monsters take more magic damage. However, I already got the Reaper points, so I don't know if I'm going to go farm out a Flame Horn because I already have it. So it is what it is. Anyway, that's basically how the character functions, how to build it, and what to do with it. The general gameplay loop is run into rooms, cast all your damage spells, and blow everything up. The only exceptions to this, obviously, is during the leveling process, where you have to be a little bit more careful. During leveling, make sure you are conserving your spell points by casting AoE spells with monsters in the AoE. And what I mean by that is if you have monster here and monster here, don't cast a fireball at this guy, because the fireball is going to go here, hit this guy, and not hit this one because they're too far away. What you want to do is you want to like move forward like this, and then this guy's going to run at you, and this guy's going to run at you. And then once they're both close by, like all these 3, then you fireball them all at the same time. Don't be spending your spell points willy-nilly. That's the thing that people run into the biggest as their issues when it comes to the leveling process with wizards and other characters, because they just end up running headfirst into monsters and casting AoE spells on single targets. And sometimes you have to do that, but if you can avoid it, don't. So like, for example, let's say this guy McCrowell is an archer, or like this guy Rafe Larksong's an archer. Grab all the melees over here and then pull them here and then fight them on top of the archer, so that way you're getting through that. I think that's probably the biggest piece of advice I can give to anybody, because I read the comments all the time of people saying that they struggle to play spellcasters with spell point usage and running out of spell points. You know, if you're fighting one monster, you probably shouldn't be fighting one monster, unless you have something that can take care of it easily. For example, that's where I said Malsassaro comes in. This is your one monster killer, 6 spell points, 1 thing dies. It works really well if you have an acid spell power item, so you can just throw this on, and it's all right. It's not good for damage in endgame, but it is good for damage every once in a while during the leveling process, just kind of take out one thing. But yeah, that's all I have. So, thank you for watching. My voice is cracking now, because I'm getting over a cold. I hope you enjoy the build, have fun out there, play some wizard, do some stuff, and we'll be back with the next build guide, hopefully very soon. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye. Au revoir. See you later.